and welcome to the WhatCulture Wrestling Roundtable podcast. I'm Adam Wilbourn from WhatCulture, joined by the Dadley boys of WhatCulture, Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, to discuss all the big wrestling talking points of the week. But before we begin, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling, all one word, on either iTunes or Spotify for daily podcasts. We review Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views, we have wrestler interviews, we have more roundtable discussions just like this one, and a roundup of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But gents, lots to discuss this week. The first thing I want to start off with is the question, should WWE blur the lines more? And it's kind of been sparked by the news that's come out today of the, let's just say, altercation, that's the way WWE are describing it, between Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch as Charlotte was doing a talk at the Performance Center with some of the females from WWE NXT. A lot of people obviously have seen this as just an escalation of an ongoing feud that they've got. They're going to have a last man standing match at WWE Evolution on Sunday. But it does sort of hark back to an era when it did seem to make a lot more sense that, yes, you know, not necessarily just, oh, you don't travel together or you're not seen hanging out together, but really 24/7 sort of living the storylines. Is that something that perhaps WWE should do more in 2018?
I think it's important to differentiate between blurring the lines in 2018 versus what Vince Russo would try and do in the Attitude Era, and then especially when he got to WCW. As fans, and I think I speak for most fans, we still want to believe that what we're watching is real, even though we know it's not. It's never been about somebody bursting the bubble and saying, you do know this is fake, right? That's never been part of it. We just want to engage for the period of time we're watching what we're watching. And I think if blurring lines now is this newer version where we're allowed to know it's not real while engaging in something like a brawl, I think it's kind of the perfect compromise. I think it dials a lot back from some of the worst near the knuckle reality stuff of the Attitude Era without kind of patronising and condescending you as a viewer.
It's nice to not have a storyline furthered where the two guys are just squabbling in the ring in a sort of very, all right, this is our segment, so we're going to have to go and squabble like school children, but we're not having a match for another 3 weeks, so we can't lay our hands on each other yet, which is so deeply contrived and formulaic. I want my wrestlers to look like they absolutely hate each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think when we're watching discussing UFC 229 the other week, Conor McGregor and, can you do the name?
Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, thanks. They looked like they really, really hate each other because they do really, really hate each other. And I'm getting the impression from this worked scenario with Charlotte and Becky Lynch, that their hatred cannot be contained to your regular episodic programming. And it's just nice to have sort of a commitment to a storyline that's just outside the parameters of scripted television.
It's tricky when we sort of use UFC as a comparison point, I think, because UFC, one of the things they don't need to do that WWE feel like they do is have those fighters, say, come together 2 weeks later in a tweet for, say, Make-A-Wish or for some sort of other thing. This is always goes back to WWE having so many masters to serve.
Yeah.
So what we tend to find is that if you want to try and keep up with the company, say on Twitter, which is something they would tell you to always keep up on, kayfabe's going to be smashed, every day? Because you're going to see, say, Nia Jax at a press junket with Alexa Bliss or Charlotte and Becky ahead of Evolution doing something at a local school together. Not about them having a fight, but about them working together to help, sort of paint a local school's wall or something like that. I just think I would rather, if you're going to use social media as a platform, use it for moments like this, captured at a house show, captured at the Performance Centre, than the charitable side of things, which, to be fair, has to exist because WWE is such this massive corporate entity. Keep it separate from the pro wrestling vehicle that you're supposed to invest in once or twice a week.
There's a lot of discussion at the moment with WWE potentially apparently having Daniel Cormier in for a tryout to do some work on SmackDown commentary.
Yeah.
Would that add another element to it, of a more sporting element to it, perhaps?
Well, by all accounts, and by all I mean Dave Meltzer, we just regurgitate his stuff. Fox reportedly wants a sports-oriented brand, which makes us question what they think they've bought. I mean, I don't care. It would be much better. We were talking about press conferences the other week. Daniel Cormier is an MMA guy, can provide pro wrestling insights. Not sure how that works, but some kind of effort to get away from this formula, which, if we're looking at Raw's lower viewership or the empty arenas that SmackDown plays in front of, I mean, I think people are tiring badly of the format, which explains why even the surefire nostalgia pops that the DX and Brothers of Destruction got, that didn't draw a rating. That got a dismal third-hour rating when they did the go-home show for Super Showdown. I think it's not the stars or the talent that's the problem. I think the formula is absolutely killing everybody. Everyone's enthusiasm is just deadened by this talk show stuff that they do.
I think it does. The Fox deal brings into light like how much WWE might be prepared to kowtow for the benefit of this deal. So much money has been paid for this product, and like the networks, I know they value WWE content as this kind of like this middle ground between live sports and like live entertainment, but they're not daft enough to know that if ratings continue to sag, they'll just be like, oh well, it'll do. It's the best of our bad situation. WWE themselves haven't experimented with an announcer like this probably since Mauro Ranallo, and it just didn't fit. Like you could just hear it week by week.
Was too good.
Him talking himself out of his job. I'm not even a huge Mauro fan, but I admired what he brought to the product that was different. And you could almost hear Vince McMahon shouting through his headset rather than hearing Mauro's voice towards the end. Mike Goldberg, another UFC voice, turned it down, didn't he? Because he looked what was in front of him and just thought, it's not going to be for me. So if Fox are kind of going to be the ones that are kind of like forcing the company's hand, then if nothing else, it creates a change where they probably otherwise wouldn't have bothered to think about it.
What's different is that USA needs WWE more than Fox needs WWE. So I'm hoping like their influence can create a better product. I mean, almost instantly they've got a better idea of what needs to change more so than WWE does. And if they've got that influence, then please let it happen, I guess.
We saw what happened in this year when in the Superstar Shake-Up they needed to put SmackDown Live in the shop window. The draft for the first time in years went SmackDown's way. So that was the company responding to a financial need. So if this is now the kind of the upshot of that, like I'm all for that. And like any other positive changes at the network, for a change, if the network like sort of swing the axe through WWE's formula, as you say, like whether it be the look of the show, the staging, everything that we've always looked at for years, it's been 20 years, 20 more since the product has looked and felt different. If this is what like gives Kevin Dunn a bit of a kick up the backside or gives Vince McMahon this idea that like, oh, I don't particularly want to, but we need to, then it's got to be for the betterment of the product overall.
But like the power schism at the minute is WWE's here, the fandom's opinion down there in the gutter because we're just idiots who don't matter anything. If you can get the network above WWE, just please, that would be absolutely amazing.
Now, to bring it quickly back to social media there, you mentioned obviously, we saw Becky responding to the tweet about them looking into the, what did they say, altercation at the Performance Centre. Do they maybe need to alter their way of looking at how some of their superstars act on Twitter as well? Because we've seen the likes of Kevin Owens. We've obviously seen the likes of Tommaso Ciampa. Tommaso Ciampa is a shining example. He's very different, I suppose, in NXT than main roster. But we've seen them perhaps living their gimmick through that. And on the one hand, you get people who are being told not to do that and getting told off for coming back at fans because they're meant to be the guy that the fans hate. And yet, on the other hand, you've got someone in Tommaso Ciampa who is adding an extra 10% to his value and extra 10% to his performance by being this guy who literally follows no one on Twitter, who when he wants to call out people doesn't actually at them, he doesn't want to give them that satisfaction. Is that an element that they maybe need to bring more into the main roster?
I certainly think they should be encouraged, but I think more than anything they should respond to people who've got like a good Twitter game. Because someone like Tommaso Ciampa, I respect him so much more for being able to brilliantly like banter people off. It was the same with Kevin Owens back in 2015, I think it was, when he was just killing Alex Riley for fun. If you contrast that with what Bray Wyatt's been doing on Twitter recently, he's working this like he's a mental patient gimmick, and it's so lame. I would just rather WWE just looked at the Twitter accounts, see who's getting the numbers, who's engaged, and who's really good on Twitter, and thinking, you know what, transpose what you're doing on Twitter to television, and that's the way to do it, rather than making everyone fall in line.
The old-fashioned, I can't believe I'm using Vince Russo again, the old-fashioned version of that was when Vince Russo was the editor of the Raw magazine. The WWE product was in the toilet, and Vince Russo was the editor of this magazine, and Vince took one look at it and threw it on his desk and said, what's that? This should be our product. You know, Twitter is kind of a modern equivalent of that. Like, if characters are working the gimmick, Neville was another one.
He was great on Twitter.
He became the king of the cruiserweights. He became this absolute monster on Twitter. Gon was like Ben tweeting about where he was going on holiday, you know, with his family or things like that. It was all gimmick. Twitter's something that the WWE superstars in general haven't quite figured out for me yet. I'm not even sure as a fan what I quite want out of following superstars.
I want Tommaso Ciampa.
Well, yeah, maybe. Like, on one hand, the baby faces, do I want to know that like they live wholesome lives and I enjoy buying into that gimmick? But then if I see it from a heel, I kind of go a bit old school and Jim Cornette and feel a bit like, why should I believe in that gimmick anymore? I don't know if that should be a mandate. Maybe it's not the end of the world if somebody can't be on Twitter. Should the guys and girls be told, no, if you're going to do this, it's got to be contributing to your character?
I suppose, the danger here is with WWE, it's either nothing or everything, 100%. And like you say, you kind of don't want every single person on Twitter to be doing that.
But is everything that big a negative? really is are we that entrenched
But
in
just don't follow them if you.
Well, are we that entrenched in in wrestlers wanting their own personal lives on Twitter that they can't just commit that to the bit as well?
Certainly, I like wrestlers less if they're rubbish on Twitter because I know that. Because I always go to bat and say, I just wish they wouldn't do scripted promos anymore. I wish these guys could inject some of their personalities onto their TV characters. And when I see them on Twitter fail to do that, Bray Wyatt, I just think, well, it should be a barometer for how people get pushed on TV if they can engage with their Twitter audience, I think.
Well, let us know your thoughts on this. Very interesting to see how this may well develop. And I think as a case study, this whole Becky-Charlotte thing is fascinating and is adding another element to their evolution clash. But let us know your thoughts in the comment section or on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. Moving on, another big story that people are talking about, certainly over the last few weeks, is this potential increase in the price of the WWE Network. There's talk of it now becoming $15 for a sort of tiered system for the WWE Network. For you two, what would justify that price increase for the WWE Network?
Once upon a time, I would have thought that more pay-per-views or this idea that the brands get one show a month or even one show a fortnight as we had a few years ago. I went through that, I experienced it, and I think it made me like the product less because it exposed all these holes in the
and it's burnout.
Yeah, burnout. The creative mechanism just isn't set up to support it as much as we think. Even when there's a bigger gap, even when you get a 6-week break, you think, oh, that's great. There's more time to build a story. It's not. They just run out of steam too early. For me, I think the only thing left is I wrote about this actually in an article. As a bit of a completist WWE fan, what I'm after now is real rarities and real gems and deep dives, and the company have sort of tiptoed around that. There's certain collections where you can see matches that you've never seen in. I want to see a wrestler when he was doing a finisher that then changed and wrestling opponents that had no idea he wrestled, or in gear that he only tried on house shows and Vince was like, that looks terrible, I never want to see that again. They got near it for me with the Pritchard podcasts because towards the end they added footage, and what you didn't see, so say you've got Bruce Pritchard talking about producing a segment, you didn't see the segment he produced, you saw the fact that they left the cameras running, and you saw Pritchard giving him advice. There's a lovely bit on a Goldberg feature where you see Vince McMahon kind of bollocking him in 2003 about not having enough energy, and to me that's all that's left. So much stuff that's in studio, that's in those reels that we've yet to see. I've not watched all the wrestling, but I've watched enough wrestling to keep my plate full, and I'll continue to watch the wrestling. So give me more, give me real stuff that would only be in the vault. No one else on YouTube can get near it. Only you've got that.
Yeah.
Unlock that.
I think it's a good point because WWE spent so long filtering its own history through itself, regurgitating Attitude Era, repeating the same insights across different subjects, that I'm sick of hearing about the past. So if I'm gonna see anything about the past I'm interested in, I'm with you. I want the absolute minutiae. I want the major revelations backstage.
DX on the tank.
Yeah, stuff that you shouldn't be able to see. And I think, you know what, it's about time we saw this.
You're part of the inner circle almost.
Yeah, exactly. Beyond that, I'm personally, and I consider myself a fan of more outside WWE stuff than WWE. It's old stuff from Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm not going to pay an extra $5 for that. I'm not going to pay an additional £5 for stuff from Evolve, ICW, and Progress, no matter how much I like those products, a bit. The only thing that they could get another £5 out of me for as a father of two with a very stretched budget is, WrestleMania has to be an extra premium tier.
Yeah.
I think they made a major mistake not doing it. It doesn't feel like WrestleMania anymore. It's too long. It feels more mundane, especially with the increased amount of stadium shows. If they want to restore the magic of WrestleMania, I will happily be a good little capitalist boy and pay money for it. Because it's meant to be money.
I think what we're talking about is quite important, though. I think a tiered system is quite crucial to this. If they just do a hike and you're basically asking people to stay on board for an extra $5, £5, whatever it is a month, if they do that, then I actually think it'll work in reverse and you'll push people the other way. I think there's so many other ways to access WWE, and there's so much less value on catching the pay-per-view live. Their YouTube channel is phenomenal, and I'm sure that's a revenue stream to them, so they don't mind if you go looking at YouTube. I dare say if you said £15, $15, you would have a bit of a drop-off. I don't think you'd actually have the bounce that they normally get once a year through WrestleMania, because you're asking for so much more from people.
Also kind of in danger that people have subscribed to the network and maybe arguably forgotten about it, so to speak, so that they come around and go, oh, WrestleMania, oh, I pay for the network. Whereas someone says, by the way, we're going to charge you an extra $5, you get an email about it, you get a letter, you get whatever. People might go, oh, bloody hell, yeah, that's $120 I'm spending a year, or now it'd be $180.
It seems destined to fail for me because this new price tier seems to be, right, okay, our core fan base is the hardcore of the hardcore. So we're going to get ICW, Evolve, Progress, more takeovers, possibly. That's what I've heard rumoured from PWE PW Insider and the Wrestling Observer. But their tactic to get the hardcore fans has kind of failed spectacularly. NXT's a money loser, as much as those 5 nights of the year are just the best time to be a wrestling fan. It's just not going to work. Like 205 Live, a dismal failure. Like a dismal failure. Some of the people who just don't stick around for that show, they've drawn in front of like 1,000 people before. Like people are exhausted by content, so getting different content for a similarly niche audience, I cannot see it working.
It's hard for me to pass at the moment if the network era, which we're still in, they're still tinkering with the format and like the shows are kind of changing as, almost by the month to try and figure out how to make the best use of the network. I still can't quite figure out if it's been like a successful period as a fan, because we can analyse it from a financial point of view and we can look and see like, would this work for me to pay? But like, am I enjoying WWE more or less for it? It's
significantly less for me.
Well, see, it's gifted us some of the best years of content in the forms of NXT, but I completely agree with you about the diminishing returns of WrestleMania, and that's the golden egg. Nothing about WrestleMania should ever make you kind of like go, oof. But like sitting down to watch like a 7 or 8 hour show, like I never want to watch WrestleMania 32 again. And there would be points over the years where I'd happily go back and watch 6 or 7 WrestleManias just in the build up to the current one. And I can honestly say I'll probably never watch that show in full again. Yeah. And I don't really want to think that way about WWE, because the network is supposed to be a vault of things that you can constantly do that for. But there's no added value for something like a WrestleMania 32, is there? No. Because who's ever going to invest 25 minutes in that Roman Reigns Triple H main event if you've already put in 6 hours of work for it? I just still think we're still in the changing times, but the network's 4 years old, so we should be through this now.
Yeah. I think for me, you do get a decent money's worth for what you pay. It's a shame, obviously, you don't get Raw and SmackDown on there on demand, aside from weeks or months later, whatever it is. I think the talk about increasing NXT takeovers, I am excited about, because as a person who sort of dips in and out, and I do enjoy whenever they put on the takeovers, I would be intrigued to watch more. Whether or not I'd be concerned that they may become more main roster-esque in their performances or the way they're delivered. That's one thing. But I think there is other options there that, yes, with a tiered system, I certainly agree that you could justify paying more for Mania, but whether or not,
the precedent's been set now.
Yeah,
if you're doing an extra $5 a month, that's $60 you're effectively saying. And if it's only, all you're going to say is, well, that's for Mania, I'm not sure you can argue that completely. For me, yeah, I think NXT takeovers need to be improved. I completely agree with what you two say in terms of more behind the scenes stuff as a sort of real
like the minutiae now.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
The last bit of interest from the past.
I will say this for the takeovers. When I think about it, I'm thinking, oh no, not more content. This could ruin the guys. But we have also acknowledged lately that the NXT Performance Center system isn't necessarily working as they would have expected it to. So maybe in this case, more matches is more reps. Maybe the wrestlers will benefit from more big stages. Like at the moment, Takeover is this kind of the best of this roster that is a roster of two halves. You've got stars that are for the takeovers, and you've got the guys that fill out the card in Orlando. Would this not get Section B up to Section A's standard a lot quicker, and then potentially get more out of this system for the guys coming up to the main roster?
There's a happy medium to be met. Certainly, because I was discussing with you in the desks earlier, someone like Keith Lee, he's already fulfilled that shiny new toys narrative that Cassius Ohno is developing in storylines. He's like, spoiler alert, right, you've been warned, Keith Lee's not going to wrestle at TakeOver War Games, per the latest reports. And the guy, Matt Riddle, who signed subsequently to him, there's something wrong there.
It's Austin Aries and Nakamura coming in together, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I do not want 14 4.5 hour NXT takeover shows that will ruin the magic of it forevermore, but certainly 8 per year would be great, and I think I'd have more of an impetus to revisit a sort of stagnant TV show as well.
I think just put on more Table for Threes and Swerved and we'll be fine. Let us know your thoughts on that though in the comments or on Twitter at WhatCultureWE. To wrap up, very simply, boys, who should be the next WWE Champion? In 10 days' time, AJ Styles will break Diesel's record. I'm sorry about that, Michael Hamflett. He will become the 10th longest reigning WWE Champion, ahead of facing Daniel Bryan at Crown Jewel on November 2nd, if that goes ahead. Who should be the next WWE Champion for you?
Randy Orton. Randy Orton.
Good shout.
Because AJ Styles' babyface reign is I'm completely bored with it now. The problem is that the AJ Styles Samoa Joe feud was so over the top as a personal grudge rivalry. Like, the family element was just completely overdone. It was great for what it was, but there's no going back from there. You can't do an AJ Styles versus another heel rivalry now because it looks so pale compared to that. And this Daniel Bryan AJ stuff, I don't believe that the faces and the heels hate each other anymore, let alone, like, that's why babyface programs are done as often as they are, in my opinion, because people just want the matches, not these storylines, and it's not doing much for me. As a match, I'm sure it'll be good. It's a shame it's in Saudi Arabia. AJ Styles has completely worn out his welcome for me as WWE Champion. I'm sick of a babyface WWE Champion. Never thought I would say that. I just want Randy Orton to be the star that he's wrestling as, because his character work is just so great at the minute, and having him be even more arrogant and having more justification for being as horrible as he is with that gold on his shoulder, I think it would make for very good television.
You never thought you'd say that, did you?
You
never imagined a world in 2018.
Yeah, not even 4 months ago I wouldn't say that, but
it's quite something, isn't it? Like, the turnaround has been quite remarkable.
He's becoming the star that WWE's always said he is.
Hamflet, who should be the next WWE champion for you?
Shawn Michaels should be the next
Wow.
WWE champion. And my reasons are these. So his comeback is one that we weren't even sure that we wanted, and we're getting it with a huge cloud hanging over the top of it. This is not just huge money to return, it's ugly money that he's getting paid for this. It's going to be in a match that, like, it's not going to be very good. You know, if it's going to be good, it's going to be completely because of him, and there's no excuse for the other three guys needing him to carry him so much. I look at up and down the roster, and I look at guys that, like, AJ Styles theoretically could put over, but I don't think you can criticise the title reign of AJ Styles and then say, but he's going to give the rub to the guy that beats him, because I think really that's his biggest weakness now, is that whoever beats him is not going to get the shine that he would have got, say, if AJ Styles was a hotter champion than he is. Shawn Michaels, I think I want to win the Royal Rumble, so let's have, like, one of the few dream matches. Look, we're getting Bryan AJ in what is basically match one of a several match series that could well be won by AJ Styles to leave Bryan completely out the picture going into WrestleMania. So that rules out, like, a choice that would win you a pasty to win the Rumble, let's say.
Well,
so
you wait till my selection comes.
So then I look to WrestleMania and I think, well, if AJ's still got the belt, AJ Michaels is that dream match that people legitimately have talked about since before Shawn even retired, from when AJ was on TNA. It's one of them ones that still has value, especially at something like WrestleMania, especially in a match that can allow you to forget Crown Jewel. Shawn wins the big one, then who beats him is going
He'll
to
do another Saudi show a week later.
Yeah, true. But, like, it's who beats him is going to get the rub versus at this point. Because I would say someone like Almas, and I love him, but I think, like, does he get a lot from beating AJ Styles now? Is it not going to be another case of the belt needing to make the man because AJ couldn't make him, you know? So, yeah, like, we're in this era of daft stuff, SmackDown, money, whatever. Shawn Michaels.
The Rock. No, not The Rock. As much as I'd love it in 2018, I realised that that's not going to happen. The person who should be the next WWE champion, I'm going to stick to this until we know, not even that, I'm not even going to say that. Until WrestleMania happens, I'm going to keep insisting on this until it is a definitive yes or no, is The Miz. The Miz deserves to be the WWE champion, because we all know that Daniel Bryan's road to redemption leads to the WWE championship. There is no way in hell he will win at Crown Jewel, and they will crown him. He has had this feud with The Miz, which isn't over, but it is, which means it's going to continue, because this is WWE. You need to give him the Royal Rumble win next year, because otherwise this is going to be the elephant in the room forever. So you can do that, and if you have him get involved in this match at Crown Jewel to cost Daniel Bryan the match, you then lead to some sort of triple threat perhaps, or AJ versus Miz, whatever. Miz wins, Miz is WWE champion, and use all the backdoor sneaky ways to survive until WrestleMania. You have the dream match, the match we all want to see, the feud that we all got most excited about when Daniel Bryan was coming back, even more than AJ Styles or any other of the dream matches we discussed. And the first match on everyone's lips was The Miz versus Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship. WWE, make it happen.
I don't want to piss on your chips here, right? But
Yes, you do.
even if the scenario you've just laid out was going to happen, and that was in the plan, based on the reception to the first phase of that, I think McMahon would have binned it off completely if it was the plan, because this thing is just completely underwhelmed. No one's that bothered about it. Sorry, I know you are. But I just think that from an objective noise reaction to what you hear in the arenas, it's lost all of its momentum. No one seems to be as bothered as they were. It's underwhelmed. If it was the plan, I think McMahon's realised no, I'm not doing this anymore.
my point, though.
And a guy completely prone to changing his mind is just going to be like, well, I'm going to change my mind on this because the reaction's terrible.
The whole thing behind Daniel Bryan is he's the underdog. This is the underdog storyline.
He didn't push him when he was getting a reaction, and now that he's not getting a reaction, he's got no impetus to push him anymore.
Yeah, I'm with Cedric on this. I'm feeling like someone's going to need to check Chavo Guerrero's phone for a text from Adam Wilbourn the day after the Royal Rumble when Daniel Bryan's not won it. Because, listen, I think you're all about, I want to work myself into a shoot about this sort of angle. I love The Miz. Love The Miz. Like Daniel Bryan as a friend. But, I would very much like to see that WrestleMania match. I'm with you on every bit of the storyline. Every week you've pitched it. Every week, you can see the imaginary pasty floating all
Bit
over.
niche.
But it's a bit niche. I just don't think it's going to track. It's not
going to be the main event.
It's Vince McMahon. I'm with Cedric completely. Vince McMahon has seen it and has gone off it. He's actually seen it happen. He would argue to anyone in the room that would throw it up as a suggestion for WrestleMania, we did it. It was crap.
We've just done it as well.
I don't want
to
watch that again because it wasn't any good the first time. What worries me is that he thinks that the roll-up finish at Super Showdown was the payoff to the whole storyline, because that's weird. If we never go back to the storyline, The Miz beating him would have been perfect fodder for it, because Bryan's never got a touch on him. But yeah, it's dead. It is dead. It's dead until it's not, and they rehabilitate it, and nobody cares. Sometime next, July or something like that,
or next April.
Yeah,
it's very optimistic, but that's why I love you.
Yeah, don't change.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep holding out for it until that number 30 and Roman Reigns comes out. So,
booyaka, booyaka.
Let us know your thoughts on all the topics we've discussed today, either in the comment section or at WhatCulture WWE. And yes, if you've enjoyed this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to What Culture Wrestling, all one word, on iTunes or Spotify. My thanks to Michael Sidgwick and Michael Hamflet. You can follow them on Twitter. You can follow Michael Sidgwick at
Sidgwick.
You can follow Michael Hamflet at
Michael Hamflet.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. You can follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. Thank you very much for watching. We will be back on Wednesday. We're going to be releasing our Raw and SmackDown review podcast then, so we will see you then. Thanks for watching.